Hello everyone. It's one of those days when I'm where I've got a busy day ahead of me, so I'm just going to jump straight to the highlights today. So let's switch and start. Okay, come on. Oh, all right. Little slow today. So the first one is from the voltage effect. Research on effective forecasting, our ability to predict the emotions we will feel in the future, reveals that judgments about our future well-being are excessively sensitive to current mood, causing us to neglect other relevant factors. In other words, we magnify the importance of the emotion sitting in front of us, which can lead to more impulsive decision making. I think this is, yeah, it's not really that straightforward. I mean, at least the way I'm reading it right now, it's not really that straightforward. In simpler terms or in different terms, I think this says that and I'm using these words from another book, from Get It Done, because it talks about a similar concept. And that's what's wonderful about this highlight series, that whenever I read something, I can link it to another book, and that builds up a more wholesome understanding. Anyway, back to this. So this is from Get It Done, where the author says that um, we also need to have empathy to our future self when we are trying to make decisions. We make decisions in based on how we're feeling right now. So for example, if you're feeling very cold right now, right, and we are going to the warm place, but we'll not be able to imagine what we'll feel when we're in the warm place. We have trouble empathizing with that, or empathizing with ourselves in the future, for example, in a warm place, and we might pack warm clothes even though we don't need it, or the other way around. We may be in a warm climate and we may not really appreciate that we'll actually feel cold, and then not pack warm clothes, which we would need. I mean, we're naturally lazy. We are feeling good about ourselves right now. It's nice, it's warm, we don't need warm clothes. But we are missing that link, that, okay, over there, we'll feel cold. This is a very simplistic example, but it can happen in all different types of decisions. So I think this highlight also says something very similar. Effective forecasting, whatever we forecast, it's based on what we feel right now. So let's move on. 7.5 lessons about the brain. Sometimes we're responsible for things not because they are our fault, but because we're the only ones who can change them. Okay, I'm missing the context. Why is it in a book about brain? But I'm sure there's a link. I'm just missing it right now. And again, like, this is coming up in another book I'm reading right now. The difference between responsibility and taking, sorry, attributing fault. Those are different things. And I'm like, of course, I find it more appealing over here than the book I'm reading right now. But let's move on. Measuring an engineering organization. It's a recent article. I think it's one quite popular, and yeah, I really like this highlight as well. The secret of good measurement is actually measuring something. The number one measurement risk is measuring nothing, because you're trying to measure everything. You can always measure more, and measuring more is useful, but measure across many small iterations, and don't be afraid to measure something quick and easy today. I think this tells us that it's easy to get, it's easy to overthink this stuff, because measurement is a very tricky subject, because it can have a lot of consequences. We have been talking about incentives, and it's kind of like a natural tendency of managers to, um, that any measurement that comes in, okay, link it to results, link it to performance results, and like, most usually performance results. So it's very, very tricky to measure anything really. And what this tells me is that, okay, it's very easy to overthink all of this stuff, and if it is quick and easy to measure it. It's actually measuring something. And of course, we can worry that it's going to result in those consequences and everything. We have to be careful about that, certainly, but that really shouldn't stop us from measuring it in the first place. And um, you know like, that shouldn't become the obstacle over here. So it's a highlight I'm especially reflecting on recently, as I'm trying to introduce more metrics in my own organization. And yeah, so it's a good thing that this highlight came up. Let's move on. Pirates in the Navy. Transformation can fail to happen because the very people that are supposed to drive it don't believe that change can happen. I think this refers to the lip service that, okay, we are in that role, we have to say that, okay, we are going to transform things, but we know, that it's not going to happen. And that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you don't believe it, transformation can fail to happen. I think it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to move ahead. Anthro-Vision. Xerox managers usually assume that the repair crew did their jobs fixing machine inside client offices or back at their base in the Xerox office. Time spent in diners between office visits seemed like dead or wasted time. It was defined in negative terms, that is, not working. And this seemed as interesting as words. Okay, and this seemed as uninteresting as words such as empty and free, but it was not. It was not because when the repair crew they met at diners, they actually exchanged notes. They exchanged notes which led them to build patterns. What are the kind of issues they're seeing across machines, and that led them to build strategies that would make them more efficient at their job. And like the highlight says, Xerox managers they missed it. It's very very easy. Like if somebody is in the diner, if somebody's in a cafe, it's very easy to say, oh, they're not working, they're taking a break. And that may be fine. Like, okay, you're taking a break is fine. They may think, oh, it's fine. But like, attributing it to a negative term that is not working, it is detrimental. It kind of discourages people that, okay, this is something that's productive, that's making somebody more effective in the long term. And because it's being attributed this way, not working, it's discouraged. And this book, that I've been talking about recently, Remote Not Distant, it kind of talks about this. There is an unplugged mode where you may not even appear to be working, but you are. And this is especially important in knowledge industry. Like for example, in this example as well, with repair group, we see that this what appears as time off is incredibly important. And that's the same thing that applies to knowledge industry. Taking a break, thinking things over, that's the job. With the knowledge industry essentially. But okay, I think I've talked about it enough. Let's move on. Essentialism. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. Yeah, it's a supplemental highlight. And I think it's straightforward. It just says that you have to be deliberate about prioritizing your life, because if you don't, somebody else will. Because uh, if you don't know what you want to do, you will just say yes to anything that comes your way. Anything that you feel like doing, you'll do it, and you'll not be in control of your own life. So if you want to be in control, prioritize your own life. Moving on. Extreme ownership. That's right. I said you. That is what extreme ownership. I'm messing it up. Let me try again. That's right. I said you. That is what extreme ownership is all about. If you don't understand or believe in the decisions coming down from your leadership, it is up to you to ask questions until you understand how and why those decisions are being made. Not knowing the why prohibits you from believing in the mission. When you are in a leadership position, that is a recipe for failure, and it is unacceptable. As a leader, you must believe. I think this pretty much says it all. It's just says that leaders at all positions, and there are leaders at all positions. The book makes a case that everyone's a leader. So if you don't believe a decision that's coming up from up top, you ask questions around it. You get clarifications until you're convinced that, okay, you understand why the decision was made. And that is how you build context, so you can make decisions when you can't ask for permission later. That's how you build autonomy. For example, how can you be autonomous? If you know the context, if you can make decisions on the fly because you know the context, that's how you become autonomous. And yeah, I think this is what this highlight also says the same thing, that if you don't believe in what you're doing, that's a recipe for failure. That's not going to happen. It's like the previous highlight we just read from Pirates in the Navy, that transformation fails to happen because those who are in position to make the change um, don't believe it can happen. So well, I think it's the same thing. And again, it's wonderful that these links are there between these books, essentially telling the same thing, in different languages. Moving on. 4,000 weeks. While capitalism gets its energy from the permanent anxiety of striving for more, the Sabbath embodies the thought that whatever work you've completed by the time that Friday or Saturday night rolls around might be enough. That there might be no sense for now in trying to get any more done. This was especially impactful for me. That idea that it's not up to work to decide when it gets done. It's about factors that are not in your control, such as time of the day or the day of the week, that decide that okay, you're at the end of like for example in this case it's Friday or Saturday night, and now you just have to stop. There is no sense in trying to do more. And like that's kind of especially impactful to me. It kind of gives that with remote work, with the knowledge industry work, where and everything, we've kind of lost the boundaries that we naturally had when we were in office, and everybody knows this is not nothing new. And this helps us set those boundaries again. So it like okay, this is talking about Sabbath, but you could also attribute it that 5 p.m. whatever happens, you're stopping your work. For example, you start your work at, let's say, 8 a.m. or something, and then at 5 p.m. you're stopping your work, and with the thought that that's enough. And that's like a very strange feeling. Like even if when I'm saying it right now, it's kind of it feels so alien to say it, that that's enough. But yeah, that's why it is that's why it is especially important for me to say it and for me to realize it, and like talk about it on video. I hope this helps you too. But that's why it is more important for me to say it, that okay, sometimes that work is enough and there's no sense in doing anything more. Come what may, it's 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever time you set, you're just moving off work right now. You're just taking a break. So it's also interesting that how it links to capitalism and permanent anxiety of striving for more. And this also, it's kind of links to the other book that I'm reading, Dopamine, and like how it's always striving for more. For dopamine nothing else matters, it's just more and more and more. And like that weighs against HRN circuits, which are actually what give you happiness right now. Anyway, I think let's move on. Offsites that work. Okay, although necessary and desirable, opinions can easily degenerate into the anecdotal and impressionistic. A kind of equality must prevail among the participants and genuinely healthy strategic conversation. But there's no point in denying that some people's opinions are more equal than others. That's why it can be helpful to quantify participants' views gathered through interviews or surveys before the meeting. Using that anonymous data as a starting point for strategy conversations can reveal and resolve critical issues dispassionately. I think what struck me in this highlight, and of course I think it's straightforward, but what struck me in this was gathering participants' views through interviews or surveys. And interestingly, I recently organized an offsite, and this was before I read this article. It kind of like this gave me confirmation that okay, I did the right thing. I ran surveys about what we should talk about. Like that actually, that survey helped us build the agenda for the offsite meeting, and this kind of reflected to me, yeah, that okay, why it is important to. I did it like this was the first offsite I led, and this meeting, this highlight kind of reinforced in me that okay, yeah, okay, that was something, what I did was right, and I was right in collecting the surveys and building the agenda that way. That is how we should do offsites in in any case. So it was kind of like a heartening what's the word? It was kind of like a heartening reinforcement for me. That's a reason. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's still useful to share. Moving on, Legends and Lattes. It's a fiction book. I was just thinking that you don't have to forget who you were because that's what brought you here. I think this is the probably the only highlight I saved from this book, and it's telling me, like I have this notion that it's useless to regret your decisions because I'm not saying that you should not learn from your decisions, but it's useless to regret them because they made you what you are, right? And I think it's telling the same thing over here, that you don't have to forget who you were, because that's what brought you here. So you don't have to forget. You have to live with it. You have to process it. You have to think about it. Like, you have to have a healthy relationship with your past self or your past actions. But you don't have to forget that, because that's what, like, the highlight says, brought you here. And I think we're at the end of our highlights today. I wanted to keep this quick. Like I said, I have a busy day, but the highlights were, I think, they were quite deep. They were quite invigorating. So, I mean, actually, they gave me energy, today. So it was fun, and I can hope for a similar day tomorrow. You have a good day. Bye.